Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to go through my Premier League Transfer Roundup, and I'm going to start off with some Coventry transfer news. Just a reminder, if you're not interested in every club's potential signing and signings that have been confirmed, then feel free to use the timeline where it shows you which clubs I'm talking about at which point. So let's start off with the first deal, which involves Gustavo Hamer returning to Coventry for £6 million plus add-ons. This deal has now been confirmed, and to be honest, when I saw this deal, I wasn't fully convinced by it. I felt that Gustavo Hamer didn't really have a place in that side for Coventry. I felt Rodoni was a better option than 10, and then I didn't really see the point of using Hamer out wide. But for £6 million plus add-ons, I don't mind this deal at all now. It's not a huge fee at all, and it will provide a good option in that Coventry side. As well as this, I think Rodoni's going to be out for the start of the season for Cov, so I actually think that's a good signing by Coventry to make, and I don't mind that deal at all. And as well as this, the Cov fans absolutely adore him after how good he was for them in the Championship. And as well as this, I think he is a player that could potentially step up to the Premier League. And as well as this, he can deliver that magic moment for Coventry, which they may need to survive. That's what Gustavo Hamer gives you. He isn't coming off the best season for Sheffield United, but the quality is definitely there. Then I'm on to Harwood-Bellis, who's been linked with Coventry, Hull, West Ham and Benfica. Apparently he's valued at around £17 million, is Taylor Harwood-Bellis, and this is quite an interesting one. I think this would be a good pickup for around £17 million with Harwood-Bellis for either of Coventry or Hull. I think he's a centre-half that can definitely step up to Premier League level. He's comfortable with the ball at his feet, he's good on the air. He's a leader, is Harwood-Bellis, and I think he would slot into either of those sides really well. So once again, I think that'd be a good signing for those clubs to make. Then I'm on to Joshua Champong, who's been linked with Crystal Palace and Coventry. Previously, it was said that Chelsea were unwilling to sell at Champong as he was considered untouchable. That is what Xabi Alonso has stated, but apparently that has now changed, and a loan deal may be possible for Joshua Champong. I think this is a deal that 100% either of these sides should make. For Crystal Palace, I think he'd be the perfect right-sided centre-half in a back three under Perry Sarge. Comfortable with the ball at his feet. He's a mobile centre-half. He's 6'3", as well as this, he can play as a fullback. He's the perfect profile for that position. And for Coventry, I think this would be a great addition for them to make. Either him or Harwood-Bellis would really improve that defence. And if you want a more defensive right-back for a certain game, then you can bring in a Champong. And if Coventry decide that a back five may suit them better, or they want to be a bit more defensively solid, which I think they will need to be in certain games, then you can bring in Josh Champong and play him as a right-sided centre-half in a back three. So overall, I think that'd be a great signing for either of those sides to make. Then I'm on to Fikayo Tomori, who's been linked with Coventry, Newcastle, Juventus and some other European clubs. Apparently Milan are willing to sell the player as he's not part of Amarin's plans, and he's valued at £15 million, is Fikayo Tomori. He isn't coming off sort of the best couple of years, is Tomori. He has struggled at AC Milan, and it's not a huge surprise that they're willing to sell the player. But despite this, for a side like Coventry, I think this would be a good pickup for them to make. Lampard has previously worked with Fikayo Tomori at Chelsea, and as well as this, I'm pretty sure he was part of the side which he was at with Derby when he was on loan from Chelsea. And I think Tomori would be a great addition, a mobile centre-half, quite similar to an Acheampong, strong, physical and good in the air. I think this would be a great addition for a newly promoted side. So I'm happy with Coventry signing any of those centre-halves of Harwood-Bellis, Acheampong and Fikayo Tomori. For Newcastle, it could be an alright addition, but I think they need to be looking at better than Fikayo Tomori. Then I'm on to Matteo Riguri, a 24-year-old left-back. He's currently at Atletico Madrid, but it looks like he will be signing for Villa. A £23 million deal has been agreed for the player. It's just waiting for the deal to be announced, and he looks like a replacement for Luca Digne, someone that can provide competition at that left back position with Maatsen. Either him or Maatsen will most likely start. He's a 6'2" left back, and he's comfortable playing as a wing back, and last season he actually came up with 7 assists for Atletico Madrid, so he will give you that sort of attacking outlet, which is important in an Unai Emery side, as he asks his fullbacks to provide width, because he doesn't really play with out and out wingers. So overall, I think that's a signing that will suit Aston Villa well. Then I'm on to Aaron Wan-Bissaka, a 28-year-old right back, and he's been linked with Villa, Everton and Fulham. He's currently at West Ham, and last season he was relegated with them. I reckon it would cost you between 10 to 20 million pounds with Wan-Bissaka. More Premier League sides are also interested in the player. Overall, I wouldn't be fully convinced by the signing of Wan-Bissaka. Villa are apparently really interested in the player. My concern with Wan-Bissaka is the fact he's coming off a poor year. Previously, I would have been like, yeah, that's a decent addition to make. But the fact he's coming off a poor year would make me a bit nervous about this signing. He is a good defensive right back, his Wan-Bissaka, but going forward, he does struggle to offer you much. For me, he's the sort of player that could suit a manager like a David Moyes. I think he'd do well under Moyes, and I think Fulham could use this addition, as they currently have Tete and Castagna as their right back options. So overall, it could be a solid addition, but I wouldn't be fully convinced by the signing. Then I'm on to the next player, and it is Malik Diouf, a 21-year-old left back. He's currently at West Ham. He's been linked with Brentford and Sunderland. Apparently both sides have made bids worth around £40 million for the player, but apparently West Ham value him at £50 million. For me, that's too much to pay for a left back. I think £40 million is already above his valuation. And Malik Diouf didn't have the best season with West Ham. He was a freak going forward and he looked good at points, but he did struggle defensively at points, did Malik Diouf. And he didn't really perform to the level that you're looking for in a £50 million footballer, so I'm not sure if I'd be going in and getting Malik Diouf. But what I would say about this deal is he's still 21 years old, and there's a lot of potential in a player like Malik Diouf. He's got all the athleticism you need for the Premier League, and I could see him being a top left back in the future, but for now I don't see how you could justify paying that sort of fee for this player who frequently struggled defensively last season. Then I'm on to Devin Mifele, a 20-year-old left back who can also play centre half. He's currently at Toulouse, and Sunderland apparently had a fourth bid rejected for the player worth around £28 million plus add-ons. Apparently Toulouse want more money up front for the player. In terms of the signing, he could be a really good signing, could Mifele, and he could be an alternative to Malik Diouf. And I would say if he is an alternative to Malik Diouf, he suits the Sunderland system a lot more, as he's someone that can play as a left back and a centre half. He's more defensively solid, and Sunderland sometimes like to play a back three, so he could slot in as the left centre half. You could also argue that Malik Diouf suits the Sunderland system better because he can play as a wing back in a back three, but I'm just not convinced Malik Diouf is sort of what Sunderland need. I think they need someone a bit more solid defensively, so this is making me think this deal is more likely to happen. I think this is Sunderland's number one target for this position. So far, Sunderland have been very quiet this window, so it'll be interesting to see what they do in the last 3 weeks. Then I'm on to Lucas Harrington, an 18-year-old centre-half. He was at Colorado Rapids, but he's officially signed for Hull City for £17 million. This deal has been confirmed, and overall, I'm a bit mixed about the signing. I think Lucas Harrington's definitely a player with a lot of potential, and I think he'll be worth a lot more than this in the future. But in terms of sort of short-term goals of Hull City surviving in the Premier League, I'm not convinced this is really the signing to make. It's a big step up going from the MLS to the Premier League. He was impressive at the World Cup, but I'm not convinced Harrington is going to come in and be a really good defender for Hull City immediately. I think he's going to be a great defender in a couple of years. So if Hull City were to be relegated, I think Harrington would come in and be a top player in the Championship, which may well be part of their long-term thinking. But in terms of immediate impact in the Premier, I think he may struggle to provide this, but I may well be wrong. Let me know, Hull City fans, are you a fan of this signing, and do you think he'll start? I think he probably will due to the Charlie Hughes injury, but I'm not sure if I'd want Harrington starting immediately. Then I'm on to Lucas Gornadog, a 23-year-old midfielder. He was at Salzburg, but he's officially signed for Hull City for £3.5 million, and he's a bit more of an out-and-out six as a player like this that will just look to screen the back line, and for me this is most likely a bench option than a starter for Hull City, and overall I think it's a decent signing to bring in. Once again, a player that they're signing for cheap and so on, they could probably sell him for more in the future. And if Hull are a goal or two in front in a game this season, this is the sort of player you could bring on to hold out the lead, or potentially you could start him in certain games. Then I'm on to Joe Galhart, and he's officially signed for Hull City for £6.5 million. This deal has been confirmed. Last season, he was on loan at Hull City in the Championship, and overall, I thought he had a very good season. He came out with 20 goal contributions, and he can play a variety of positions, and he's also a player that works incredibly hard. Overall, I think Joe Galhart's definitely earned this move to Hull City, but I'm not sure if I would have made the signing because I'm not convinced he is a Premier League footballer as Galhart. I think he's just a really good Championship footballer, so I think he's going to struggle with the step up. And I just wonder, could have you spent this fee on a different player other than Joe Galhart? But overall, as a squad option and someone you can bring off the bench, I don't think it's the worst option because of the ability to play a variety of positions. Then I'm on to Mohamed Alacho, who's looked like he was going to sign for Hull City for £17 million, but Hull City have actually pulled out, apparently due to the amount of injuries that they've suffered in pre-season, and they've decided to redirect the budget to other areas. That is what's been discussed as the reason, and it appears Galhart is the alternative to Alacho, as he's cheaper and he can also play a variety of positions like Alacho could. So that appears to be what's happened with that deal. Then I'm on to Elliot Stroud, who has officially signed for Hull City for £3.5 million. That is the total package. That deal has been confirmed. Once again, quite a cheap deal from Hull City. He's a versatile player that can play on the left-hand side. He could operate as a wing-back if Kurvich decides to play a 5 at the back, which Hull City did use in the playoffs very effectively, or he can also play as a winger. I can't see him starting as a fullback in a back four, as Hull City already have Target and Giles, who are likely to be more solid defensively and they're more experienced at Premier League level. But overall, it could be a decent addition. I don't know a lot about the player. Then I'm on to Vopotnik, who's been linked with Hull, and they've actually made a bid for the player worth £10 million. This has been immediately rejected. Coventry and West Ham are also looking at the player. Apparently Swansea want £20 million for the player, and that's understandable considering it was the top goal scorer in the Championship last season. Overall, this could really work out for Hull City, and he could be a great addition for Hull to make. Him and McBurney could be two really good striker options to have, but for me, I'm a bit worried about Vopotnik stepping up to Premier League level. I'm not convinced he's going to be able to make that step up, despite being the top goal scorer last season. And I think there are better players that they could look at. Maybe you try go back in for someone like a Liam Delap, who they've previously had on loan. For me, he'd be a bit more of a guaranteed option. He would cost you a lot more, around 30 to 40 million pounds would Delap, but I think it'd be worth it because I think it'd give you a real chance of surviving, and I still think there's resale value in a player like Delap. And the other one I'd consider is Wilson Isidore, who's currently at Sunderland. For me, he's more of a player that's likely to do it at Premier League level, and I actually thought he looked good for Sunderland when he played last season. Then I'm on to Shea Charles, and he's officially signed for Fulham for £26 million plus £4 million in add-ons. Overall, I think this is a good addition for Fulham to add into their midfield. Shea Charles is a midfielder that can do it all. He's an all-round midfielder. He works hard, this Shea Charles, and he's solid defensively. So overall, I like this deal, and I like the signing from Fulham. Then I'm on to Sasa Lukic, who's officially signed for Ipswich for £9 million. So Shea Charles was probably the replacement for Lukic. Overall, I think this is a good addition by Ipswich, just as another solid Premier League midfielder to add into their side. And I think he's just a decent option. That's what you get from someone like a Lukic. He's solid defensively, and I think him and Matasiwa will work well as a double pivot. But a better addition that Ipswich could potentially make into their midfield to play next to Matasiwa is Palacios. Apparently Ipswich have made a bid worth £17 million for the player. Leipzig are also interested, but the issue with this deal is that Leverkusen value him at between £30 to £35 million, which I think is completely understandable because I think this is a top quality player, and this would be a great signing for Ipswich to make. Him and Matasiwa in a midfield would be absolutely brilliant. You've got Matasiwa who can do all the dirty work. He's great in the tackle as Matasiwa. He was brilliant for Ipswich last season. And then you've got Palacios, who can still offer it both sides of the ball, but he's also technically a lot better than a player like Matasiwa. He's someone that can progress the ball through the lines, and those two in the midfield is definitely a Premier League level midfield. and that's the sort of midfield that could keep you up in the Premier League. So if they can get this signing done, it would be unbelievable, but it looks like it's going to cost Ipswich quite a lot, and they've already spent a lot, have Ipswich, and it looks like they're going to be spending more because they're about to announce the signing of Julio Enciso. Ipswich have reached an agreement with the player. The fee is undisclosed, but the rumoured fee for the player is £24 million. Previously, he was on loan at Ipswich, and overall, I thought he was a solid player on loan for them. He went on loan in the second half of the season from Brighton, and what you get with someone like an Enciso is he can deliver that moment of magic. He's got a great strike on him from outside the box. Last season, he came up with 12 goals in 44 games across all competitions last season, and he really improved actually when Gary O'Neill came in as Strasbourg manager. Enciso started to find some form, so it makes sense why O'Neill wants to reunite with the player. So overall, I think this is a decent signing from Ipswich to make. He's someone that can play in the 10 and he can play off the left, and I think this could be a solid addition for them to make. Then I'm on to Abdul Otara, another player that's currently at Strasbourg. He's a 20-year-old right midfielder / fullback, and he's also agreed to sign for Ipswich for £17 million. Once again, of course, Gary O'Neill worked with a player last season, and he frequently used them as a right back, and I'm expecting him to start ahead of Furlong. Overall, I thought Furlong was good for Ipswich last season, but someone like Otara could be an upgrade on the player. He also could be a great option for Ipswich if they want to play a 5 at the back. He's an explosive player which will provide a real attacking option, but he's also comfortable inverting into the midfield, and he's a versatile player, so I think this is another good addition from Ipswich. I actually really like the look of the signing despite not seeing him play at all, and I think it's the sort of profile that Ipswich could use in their squads. And so far, what's impressed me about Ipswich is how active they've been in this market, and if they can get that Palacios deal over the line, they would have made some great signings this summer. Then I'm on to another player that Ipswich are looking at, and that is Youssouf Fofana, the 27-year-old AC Milan midfielder, as well as Ipswich, Forest, Everton, Palace and Juventus all looking at the player. He's now on the transfer list by AC Milan, as Amarin doesn't see him in his plans, and they are willing to sell for a fee between 15 to 18 million pounds. He's a physical midfielder who can play as a 6 and an 8, and I would be a fan of the signing. I think there's a good player in Fofana, and for a side like Ipswich, I see him as an alternative to Palacios. For Everton, I don't know if they really need to add a midfielder. They just add Christian Norgard into their side. They've also signed Hayden Hackney this summer, so unless they lose someone, I don't see really the point of this sort of deal. For Palace, I think they are definitely looking at a midfielder, and another one they've been looking at is Lamine Camara, who I'm going to discuss later. And then for Forest, they're clearly looking at midfielders to replace Elliot Anderson. They were interested in Reinders, but it looks like he's off to Saudi Arabia. And they've brought in Schlager, but clearly they want to add at least one more midfielder into their side. Then I'm on to Lamine Camara, the 22-year-old midfielder. He's currently at Monaco, and as I said, Palace are interested in the player, and they've actually made a bid worth £35 million for the player. Manchester United and Chelsea are also interested, as well as other Premier League sides. He's valued at £50 million, is Lamine Camara, so a very steep fee for Palace to pay, and I was actually surprised they were willing to bid that much for a player. I think this would be an excellent player for Palace to bring in. He can play next to Wharton as an aggressive box-to-box midfielder. He's very good defensively, is Lamine Camara, and he'll provide real legs into that side. I think him and Wharton as a double pivot would just be outstanding, and this would be a great signing for Palace to make. And I think this could be another player where he comes in, he has a couple of really good seasons for Palace, and then they sell him on for 70 to 80 million pounds. I think Lamine Camara could be that good. For Manchester United and Chelsea, I get the signing. I think him and Caicedo in the midfield could be really effective. And for Man United, I think Lamine Camara could provide those legs into a midfield that they're looking for. I don't think they need an out-and-out 6 to Man United. I just think they need someone to provide legs into that midfield to play next to either Tielemans or Mainu and start ahead of Santos. Then I'm on to Gesson, and he's officially signed for Crystal Palace. Last season he was there on loan, and now he's joined for another season-long loan. This has been confirmed. overall, I'm not a huge fan of this deal. I thought Gesson was alright when he was on loan at Crystal Palace, but he wasn't that impressive, and I think he's a very average footballer from what I've seen so far. But before he joined Villa, he was actually highly rated, but when he joined Villa, he was poor. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Gesson. I'm not the biggest fan of the signing. Then I'm on to Anan Kali, a 21-year-old winger slash wingback, and he's agreed to join Crystal Palace for a deal worth £21 million. All we're waiting now is the official announcement, and this is the sort of player that suits this Palace system perfectly. He can operate as a wingback and as a direct runner. He's very similar to Daniel Munoz. He'll provide a real threat down that right-hand side. Previously, he's actually failed a medical at Inter, which has to be a concern, so Palace will want to be extra careful on that. And Forest were interested in the player, but it appears Palace have agreed a deal for him. He could be competition for Daniel Munoz, but he's potentially a replacement, as Munoz has been linked with moves away. And this brings me on to Daniel Munoz, who has been linked with a move to Everton as well as Forest. And Daniel Munoz is valued at £20 to £25 million. And I think Palace will be more willing to sell the player now that they've got that youngster in who could be a long-term replacement. And I think Palace are clearly thinking about the future, selling Munoz and then bringing a 21-year-old wing-back. In terms of these sides buying this player, for me, Munoz is a player that thrives in a back five but would struggle in a back four. So for Everton, I'm not fully convinced by this signing unless they're planning to shift to a back five. And I did have a little think about this, and this could work. Everton in a back five. You could play O'Brien, Tarkowski and Brentford as your three centre-halves, and then you could play Munoz as a wing-back and then sign a left wing-back. So if Everton were to do something like that, then this deal would make a lot of sense for them, but if he's to play in a back four, I think they'll struggle to get the best out of him, and David Moyes really prioritises defensive-minded players in his full-back positions, and someone like Munoz would struggle to provide this. For Forest, I think it would be an excellent signing for them to make. It appears Forest are going to play a back five under Glasner, and of course Glasner worked with Munoz at Crystal Palace, so I think this would be a great signing for them to make. He would thrive in that system, as he's previously done. Then I'm on to Disasi, who's been linked with Crystal Palace, West Ham and Everton. He's been valued at £25 million by Chelsea. They want to sell the player, and for me, I think Disasi would be a great addition for Palace or Everton to make. I think he's actually a very good defender, is Disasi. I think he's quite underrated. I think he just struggles in a high line, and that's why he struggled at Chelsea. And I don't doubt the commitment to someone like a Disasi, because last season he went on loan to West Ham and I thought he was absolutely brilliant. He can play in a back four and a back five. I think he'd really suit that Palace system, and if Everton are planning to play a back five, then he would really suit their system as well. And at either of these clubs, someone like an Axel Disasi isn't going to be required to cover large spaces. He's just going to have to sit pretty much in a low block or a mid block and just defend, and he's not going to have to do too much else. This would really suit him as a player. Then I'm on to a swap deal, and this has been confirmed, and this is a very rare deal to occur. The last time this happened was when Mkhitaryan went to Arsenal and Sanchez went to Manchester United, and that deal didn't work out for either party. This swap deal involves Dwight McNeil joining Crystal Palace and Johnson joining Everton, and to be honest, I think this deal is going to be very similar to the last one. I don't see this deal working out at all for either side. First of all, I don't think Dwight McNeil really suits that Palace system. Most likely they're going to continue with a back five. I don't see him playing as either of those sort of left-hands slash wingers. I don't think McNeil really suits that. For me, he's a touchline winger that looks like crosses into the box. That is McNeil's best attribute, and I also think he's a very average footballer. The only area of the pitch I could really see McNeil playing for Crystal Palace, if they do play a back five, is as a wing back, as he does have a good cross in him, but I just wouldn't trust him defensively. He is decent in terms of tracking back and getting back, but it's so much different having to actually be a wing back in a back five, so I'm not convinced by that deal at all. In terms of Brennan Johnson going to Everton, I think this is a better deal for Everton. I think they do have a better player in Johnson, but once again, I don't think it's a great signing at all. He's a very limited winger, is Brennan Johnson. What he is good at is being in the right place at the right time to score goals, and he will score you 10 goals a season, but he also will very rarely create you a goal, will Brennan Johnson, and he also doesn't work incredibly hard, so I think he may struggle in that David Moyes system. I'm not fully sold by that signing at all. So overall, I don't think this is a great deal for either side. I think the advantage for Palace in this deal is that they have got rid of Brennan Johnson's wages, but the problem is that they've just spent 35 million quid on a player and immediately sold him after 6 months. It just hasn't worked out for Brennan Johnson at all at Crystal Palace. What I actually would say for Crystal Palace is at least they've got a player that they've wanted. In the past, Palace have actually wanted Dwight McNeil. In January, that was a player that they tried to get, but they were unable to sign. Now they do have their man. I'm just worried the fact that I don't think Dwight McNeil was a player that will work in that Palace system at all. Very similar to how Johnson didn't work for Palace either. Then I'm on to Alvedi, a 29-year-old Swiss Mönchengladbach centre-half, and it looks like he could be signing for Leeds. They have agreed personal terms with the player. They just need to agree a transfer fee. He's a centre-back that's comfortable on the ball, and most likely he will play as a central centre-half in a back three, and he's known for his line-breaking passes. The problem with a player like Alvedi is he is quite slow, so you probably have to play him as that central centre-half. I don't think he would cope as one of the wide centre-halves in a back three. Then I'm on to Harvey Elliott, a 23-year-old midfielder who can also play out wide. He's been linked with Leeds and not Leipzig. Apparently, a potential fee could be around 26 to 30 million pounds for this player. In terms of Harvey Elliott at Leeds, I think this could work. I think he would suit the Farkas system as a potential sort of creative sort of attacking mid/winger. That is a role that would suit Harvey Elliott, and he could add some creativity into that side, but I wouldn't do this if I was Harvey Elliott, and I don't think I want to join Leeds because Leeds have just signed Harry Wilson, and I think Wilson will start ahead of Harvey Elliott, so unless he plays in that sort of other left-hand role, I don't see him getting into that side, and I don't think he'll play there because I think Noah Okafor will start, so unless Leeds are planning to go to a back four, I don't really get the signing of Harvey Elliott, and I don't really see where he would play, which is making me think this deal probably won't happen, but you never know. Harvey Elliott wouldn't be the worst addition for Leeds to make, even if he is a backup which you use in certain games where you want more creativity. Then I'm on to Diamonde, and he's officially signed for Forest for £34 million. I think this is a great signing by Forest, one of the best signings of the summer. He's a really talented centre-half, is Diamonde. He'll be really comfortable in a back three playing as a right centre-half. He's great on the ball. He's got a great passing range. In a back three of him, Milinkovic and Murillo is rock solid, and then you could potentially sign someone like a Munoz as a right wing back and then Nico Williams as left wing back. Forest are building a really good side, and then you've still got Olaina who can operate as a fullback. I'm really liking what I'm seeing from Forest, and overall I think that's a top signing. Then I'm on to Tijani Reinders, who has been linked with Al Qadesh, and it looks like he will be signing. They've agreed a fee with Manchester City for £51 million. Overall, that's a great sale by City. Tijani Reinders is just not in Maresca's plans. That's what it does appear, and he wasn't in Guardiola's plans either. And to get more for what you bought him for is absolutely ridiculous, because Reinders really struggled for City last season. He was nowhere near good enough, and I think that's a great sale, and they can now reinvest that into players that they actually want. Then I'm on to the next deal, and it is Rodri, who continues to be linked with Barcelona. Apparently Barca's latest bid is a total package of around £60 million. City want more for the player, I think closer to £70 million, and they also want more guaranteed up front and less in add-ons. Overall, if I'm City, I'm not selling Rodri this summer, and I'm just taking the loss of the fact he may leave on a free transfer the following summer, because you can't afford to lose a player like Rodri. He's absolutely vital to that side. Without him, they're a complete mess, and that was proven this season when he was out with an ACL injury, and he's just so integral to that side, and he's one of the best footballers in the world. If City are to sell Rodri, I would actually be asking for a price closer to £90 million, even more, but it appears City are willing to sell for around £70 million. I do think this deal will happen, and I think it will cost City this season. Then I'm on to Enzo Fernandez, and it looks like he won't be joining Manchester City. There was a heavy link with this. Apparently City were willing to go in and buy him, but Chelsea demanded around £120 million for the player. That was their asking price. As well as this, they actually set a deadline of Friday 5 p.m. UK time. That has now passed and no deal has been agreed. So it looks like the signing will not occur. Enzo Fernandez won't be joining City. Overall, I think that's the best for City. I don't think they need this sort of player in their midfield unless he's going to play sort of an advanced sort of 8 or in the 10 position, and then Cherki plays out wide and Semenyo plays out wide, or Doku. Because for me, Enzo Fernandez isn't that effective in a double pivot, and he's not the sort of player to complement Anderson if Rodri departs. If Rodri departs, then I'd go in and get someone like an Adam Wharton. I think he'd be the perfect player to play next to Elliot Anderson. So overall, I think that's the best for City that they've pulled out of this deal. For Chelsea, I would have actually made more of an effort to sell Enzo Fernandez. I don't really see him working in that side this season. As I've already said, I don't see him as a player that's very effective in the double pivot, especially in the Premier League. For me, next to Caicedo, you want someone more like an Adam Wharton, not an Enzo Fernandez. And he's not going to play further forward because most likely Alonso's going to play a back three, and his left hand's going to be Rodgers, his right hand's going to be Palmer. He's not going to play in either of those 10 positions. So for me, Chelsea should have sold Fernandez and then use the funds to go in and buy someone that suits that system better, but they haven't decided to do this. Then I'm on to Pedro Neto, who's been linked with Arsenal, Spurs and Manchester City. I've got no idea why, but apparently they are interested, and he's valued at £70 million. If Chelsea can sell the player for close to that fee, they've had an absolute blinder, because he's just simply not good enough. Is Pedro Neto. I don't think for Chelsea's level or any of these sides' level, they need better. It does feel like the most Arsenal signing, but surely they're not going to fall for the signing again from Chelsea after Madueke, which has been very average, and Kai Havertz. I don't think Spurs will fall for this. I think they'll get someone better than Pedro Neto, despite them needing a right winger, and surely City don't go by the player. Apparently Enzo Maresca wants him because he's previously worked with him, but I just can't understand this at all. He's such an average footballer as Neto. I think he's an effective player for a side like an Everton that are going to play on the counter. That's the sort of side that should be looking at someone like a Neto. So overall, if I'm any of those sides, I'm not buying him. And if I'm Chelsea, I'm trying to sell the player, and I'd be offering him for less. Then I'm on to Lewis Scully, who's been linked with Manchester United and Chelsea. Now, this is really interesting because Scully's obviously come through the Arsenal Academy, and last season he had limited game time until the end of the season, and it sort of looked like Lewis Scully had broken into the side playing as a midfielder. But then in the summer, Arsenal have gone in and made a really good signing of Bruno Guimaraes, and I think this signing will limit Scully's game time even more. As well as this, Arteta doesn't really want to use him as a fullback. He wants a more defensive-minded fullback. He either wants to use Calafiori or Hincapié in this position. So Lewis Scully could well end up leaving this summer. For Manchester United, I think this would be a good signing. He could play as a left back and as a midfielder. And once again, I don't think Man United need a really defensive-minded midfielder. I just think they need someone with legs, and someone like Lewis Scully would provide this. And for Chelsea, I think once again it would be a good signing. I could see him playing really well in a double pivot next to Caicedo. As well as this, he could well play as a wing-back. And I think this is a hugely talented player, and I think it would be a massive mistake for Arsenal to get rid of him. But clearly he just isn't in Arteta's plans right now. Then I'm on to Victor Osimhen, who's been linked with Arsenal. It looked like this deal could happen, and it could actually involve Martinelli, who was discussed in a swap deal, but it appears Martinelli has no interest in joining Galatasaray. As well as Arsenal, Spurs are interested in the player, as well as Al Hilal. And apparently Al Hilal have actually made a bid for the player worth £110 million, but it's been rejected. So that shows Galatasaray's stance on the player. They don't want to sell Victor Osimhen at all, despite a club offering a massive fee for the player. And one of the potential issues with a player like Victor Osimhen is his wages. He demands extremely high wages. That's why he ended up going to somewhere like Galatasaray. But I think it would be a really good signing for Arsenal to make. I think it'd be the sort of striker that could work in that Arteta system. He works really hard, does Victor Osimhen, and he'll just be a much better Victor Gyökeres. He's much better at holding up the ball, and I think he's a much better footballer. I do think Arsenal need to buy a 9 this summer, but for me, the one I'd be buying if I was Arsenal would be a Julian Alvarez. Apparently he's valued at around £100 million, is Julian Alvarez, and the reason why I think Arsenal should buy this player is because he's not a proper striker. He's a striker that looks to drop in as a false nine. I think this is the best sort of striker that works in Arsenal's system. I think they like someone that drops in, he links up the play. That's what Julian Alvarez can do. He's less of a battering ram than someone like a Victor Osimhen, and if you look at Arsenal's best attacking seasons, it comes with false nines. When Havertz was playing well, when Jesus was at his best, Arsenal looked the best going forward, and I think that's what Alvarez could provide. For Spurs, I think that'd be a great signing for them to make, but realistically, are they going to be able to pay that fee? Probably not, and will Osimhen go somewhere else? I would say so. Then I'm on to Gabriel Martinelli, who's a 25-year-old winger at Arsenal. As I've previously said, Galatasaray were interested, and they actually put a £38 million bid in for the player, but it was rejected by Arsenal. But as I've already said, Martinelli wasn't interested either way, so he won't be joining Galatasaray. Napoli and Roma are also interested in the player. Overall, I think Arsenal need to sign Martinelli and get an upgrade on him. I don't think he's good enough to start for Arsenal or even compete for a first team place. I just think he's a very average footballer, is Martinelli. And for Arsenal to move forward, they need to go in and add that quality winger into their side. Last season, the weakness in that team was the left wing and the striker position. Then I'm on to a deal which I didn't expect to be talking about, and that is Jarell Quansah, who's been linked with Arsenal and Manchester United. It is worth noting that Liverpool have a £59 million buyback for the player. Leverkusen have stated that they're not interested in a sale for Jarell Quansah, but if Man United and Arsenal offer at least £59 million, I reckon they would entertain that deal, knowing that Liverpool have a buyback either way. And if a club offered £65 million, they may be going, well, if Liverpool activate the buyback, then we'll end up getting less for the player. And I do think this is sort of the most Arteta signing for Arsenal, because he's a centre-half that can also play right-back. Arteta's a massive fan of these sort of plays. For his right backs, he currently has White and Timber, who are exact examples of this. For his left backs, he has Calafiori and Hincapié, who can both play as centre halves. So it's a signing that makes a lot of sense for Arteta to make. Would I make this signing? Probably not. I think you could do better than someone like a Quansah. As well as this, if Arsenal were going to go in and buy a right back this summer, for me, they should go get a traditional right back that could offer more going forward, and someone that could actually support the Arsenal attack, because as good as Timber is defensively, he does struggle to sort of impact the side going forward, and I think that is a limitation of the player. And for certain games, you may want an attacking fullback. For Man United, there's been some discussion around this deal, but I just don't think that link's real at all. I don't see Quansah going to Man United. I also don't see them wanting the sort of player. Then I'm on to Ronald Araujo. He's officially signed for Liverpool. This has been confirmed as a loan deal with an option, and this is why I don't see Quansah going back to Liverpool, because Araujo's almost the exact profile. He's a centre-half that can also play at right-back. And when this deal was sort of being talked about, it was very surprising. It came out of nowhere. For me, Liverpool need to add more quality in that centre-half position to replace someone like Konate, and this just isn't it. Recently, Araujo has struggled for form and confidence. The only positive I can see from this deal is that it is a loan with an option, so if he struggles, it's not a permanent signing. And maybe another positive is that if he can somehow get back to his best, then you've got a quality centre-half to replace Konate. But I just don't see this happening, and I think Araujo will struggle under Areola. He's previously struggled in a high line under Flick, and that could happen once again. So I think that's a concern for Liverpool. As well as this, he's just very injury prone, is Ronald Araujo, and I think this could be the next for Melo. I think he could come in, he may play a game or two, but I think he'll immediately get injured and he'll struggle from there. Then I'm on to Savinho, who's been linked with Spurs. Apparently City value him at £70 million. I'm not a huge fan of the signing for Spurs. I think Savinho is very average from what I've seen so far, and I think there's better wingers out there than a player like this, and I don't really get the signing, especially at that fee. If you half the price, then I could maybe be a bit more of a fan of the signing of Savinho. For Manchester City, if you can get the sort of money for this sort of player who's not even a frequent starter and barely gets used off the bench, then that's a great deal for them. Then I'm on to Christian Romero, who's set to sign for Atletico Madrid, and Atletico and Spurs have agreed a fee worth £34 million for the player. Overall, I think Spurs will be pretty disappointed with that fee. I reckon they would have wanted around £50 million at least for Romero, because he's a better player than a £34 million centre-half. And the reason why this is so cheap is, first of all, you're not selling to the Premier League where the wealth is, you're selling to Atletico, and second of all, Romero's made it so clear he wants to leave. Spurs have also made it clear that Romero's not part of their plans, so immediately the price does go down. So overall, I think it's a pretty disappointing sale for Spurs to make, but the sale had to happen because Romero's just such a nuisance to have around, especially when he's not even starting. And then finally, I've got Jed Spence, who looks like he will be signing for Inter Milan. A fee has been agreed for £26 million, and overall, I think that's another deal where Spurs would have felt they could have got more. There was Premier League interest in the player, but it looks like he will be going to Inter. And as well as this, he could have been a valuable player for Spurs this season. I think this is quite a loss as Jed Spence, because if you want a more defensive-minded right back, then you could play Spence for certain games, because Porro can struggle defensively. He can also provide valuable cover at left back, but I think it's clear Spence wanted to go somewhere where he's more of a guaranteed starter. For other sides, I think sides like Liverpool have missed out on this deal. I think Spence would have been a really good addition, someone that can play as a right back and a left back, two positions where they're struggling for depth right now. And even somewhere like Everton, who are also linked to the player, that would have been a great addition for them to make, because he would have suited the Moyes system, someone that's defensively solid but can also offer something going forward. So that is the end of this video. Please let me know your thoughts on it. Where do you agree and where do you disagree? What rumours have I missed? And if you enjoyed this video, it'd be great if you subscribe to the channel, as well as liking the video and hyping the video.